Turning to an in-depth report, a new law in Washington set to go into effect could put both RV and trucking companies in a rough spot. Apple Valley News Now's Dan Hansen has been digging into this law to see how it will affect not only the state of Washington, but the entire Northwest.
Starting on January 1st, the state of Washington could stop the sales of new RVs and large trucks powered by diesel or gasoline. This comes after Washington voted to follow emission regulations modeled by California. The new rule will affect vehicles over 8,500 pounds, but not everyone is on board with these new regulations.
With electric vehicles, the cart is before the horse. There is not an electric vehicle in operation today or even available today that will serve the agricultural sector.
In 2020, Senate Bill 5811 was passed by the state legislatures. The bill is sponsored by Senator Joe Wynn, who is also the chair of the Senate Environmental Committee. This bill says the state will adopt the Clean Air Vehicles program, which includes medium and heavy-duty vehicles like recreational vehicles, semi-trucks, and farm equipment.
That is a mandate directly on manufacturers to produce and sell an increasing number of zero-emission vehicles.
Sherry Call is the CEO of the Washington Truckers Association. She says Washington lawmakers decided to follow California's zero-emissions vehicle laws. Call says with this new law, the RV and trucking industries are now facing a new era in those vehicle sales.
The way that's being applied right now, their mandate for 2025, when it goes into effect for Washington, is to sell at least 7% of vehicle sales have to be zero emission.
She says the problem with this is, in Washington, nobody is really ready for it. Shane Vasek has been driving trucks since 2013 and says he is one of those people who aren't ready for this.
I mean, personally, I don't really see any positives of it. I mean, there has to be for them to be pushing it. You know, the environment is very important.
Senator Joe Wynn says this bill is important to him because he says we're in a climate crisis and says the state needs to use every tool they have to provide a sustainable future.
This ZEF standard has shown to be very successful in other jurisdictions in which it's been implemented. California, I think, is a key reason that we're seeing the acceleration of automakers developing and deploying these new electric vehicles as well. But it authorizes the Department of Ecology to adopt California's zero emissions vehicle program. And just because it came up a few times on the Senate side, the reason why we're adopting California's is because we can't preempt the federal government. That's the only thing we can do.
The regulations also target large diesel and gas-powered motorhomes, including Class A and Class C models, to follow Washington's plan to phase out new gasoline vehicle sales by 2035. I reached out to multiple RV dealers for comment and was told there are so many moving parts to this bill, they didn't want to comment on this. Vasek says the biggest concern about this bill is for the farmers.
Because they use trucks. And, you know, they only use trucks X amount of months out of the year for harvests. And you think that they got to go buy a $200,000 truck, you know, to keep up with regulations. You know, that's what it's going to come down to in the future. And you just think about what those costs are going to do. It's going to increase the price of the product that they're providing.
Kyle Buse is the owner of Angel Brook Farms in Pasco. He says the state isn't set up for this and doesn't have the infrastructure.
I mean, I can only approach it from a farm standpoint. And the thing about agriculture in this area, you know, agriculture is a main industry in this area. And, you know, when it's time to harvest, it's time to harvest. When it's time to plant, it's time to plant.
Buse says he's hoping this won't affect the farming industry right now because there's nothing they can do. As a farmer, he has no problem with electric vehicles. In fact, says the state needs to be going that way. However, if there is a shortage of trucks on the road, it will affect how he makes his living.
The bottom line is, yeah, you've got big, heavy-duty trucks that are needed to get the harvest and to get them, you know, to the packers. Like, if you watch in this area, you know, what, mid-September to mid-late October, look at all the Apple trucks that you see going up and down the road. how are we gonna, and again, that Apple has got to get to market when it's, you can't say, I'm gonna pick it in a week, or I'm gonna wait a couple of days because they can't get trucks because we're working on, trying to get them electric.
Under the advanced clean air regulations, manufacturers who can't make enough vehicles that qualify under these regulations can purchase credits from other manufacturers who have credits to spare. Those who need to purchase a truck that is gas or diesel powered in Idaho or Montana, where these CARB regulations are not in place. Washington would allow the vehicle to be registered as a used vehicle only after that truck or RV has 7,500 miles on it. Call says this new mandate is threatening and could be devastating to the Washington trucking industry.
That's the vicarious nature of this industry, is we compete with companies from out of state. So if we have to double our costs, we're not going to be in business. So there's a real threat, honestly, to the supply chain with this.
Call says the mandate on the manufacturers would require they sell a certain percentage of zero-emission vehicles to the dealers before they can sell a legacy vehicle. Dan Hansen, Apple Valley News Now.